Sean Fest returns on August 28th at the Westin Chicago Northwest in Itasca. Registration is free. Go to 560theanswer.com/SHAUN Fest.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. On this trade impasse with the Canucks, it's a little difficult to take them seriously, even their business coalition, when they start every conversation like this.
Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We recognize and honor the enduring presence, cultures, and contributions of Indigenous peoples, and we are grateful to be able to gather on this territory today. Alors aujourd'hui...
Yeah, okay, all right. Anyway, if we could get to the business of the matter, CNBC's Joe Kernan discussing the impasse with a Canadian trade official named Dom LeBlanc, and pointing out, and this is instructive for us too, whatever Canada's doing, probably not something America or any other country that wants to grow should do, given what Canada's tax and regulatory schemes have imposed on Canadians. Take a listen.
I know you're familiar with GDP. Personal GDP actually is falling most years in Canada. The OECD projects that Canada, out of 38 OECD members, will rank 38, dead last in GDP per capita growth through 2060. And I'm trying to figure out why.
Through 2060.
To see. And I do find one thing, it says here, tax and regulatory competitiveness. There's a gap even with the U.S. where we think permitting, and we've got all these problems down here. How bad is it in Canada? And what changes do you think need to be made at this point? I don't think you're really negotiating from a strong position based on these things.
Well, that is where I might respectfully disagree with you. I think that if Canada is the top export destination for 26 U.S. states, we sell oil and gas and potash essential to the U.S. manufacturing economy, huge value added in the United States. So we can find compelling examples where trade done properly benefits both countries. But I certainly take your question in terms of the regulatory burden, in terms of tax competitiveness. Those are issues that Prime Minister Carney ran on in the election last year. He got a mandate to be able to ensure that federal permitting, for example, of these major projects, think of big energy projects, think of clean energy projects, port infrastructure. We're diversifying our trade relationships around the world. We've signed in the last year 20 deals worth tens of billions of dollars with other economies. So we've been very active in looking at new trading relationships, at diversifying the economy, but share your concern around the competitiveness in a tax and permitting context. And we have taken, and we will continue. In fact, we're introducing legislation in Parliament next month to deal with accelerated permitting, exactly along the lines of what you mentioned.
You know what Dom LeBlanc, the Canadian trade official, you know who he sounds like? J.B. Pritzker. He sounds like an Illinois politician presiding over a sclerotic, failed state and trying to give the impression that they're doing something dynamic to address it, and they're not. But it does speak to that the background that Kernan offered up does speak to the obvious point, which Trump and others have made repeatedly. Canada needs us a lot more than we need them. For more on this and other matters, pleased to be joined by Steve Moore. And our conversation with Steve Moore is brought to you by Home State Bank. Consider Home State Bank as an impartial trustee to your estate and spare your family from conflict and disagreements. Talk to a Home State Bank trust officer today by calling 815-459-2000. Again, that's Home State Bank at 815-459-2000. Steve Moore, economist, co-founder of Unleash Prosperity. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Good morning, Dan. By the way, I just want to be on record. I love Canadian hockey and I love Canadian bacon. Okay.
Okay. Well, you both are going to be more. Your hockey stick and your bacon is going to be more expensive. But other than that,
Right.
I mean, what I know you're a free trader. You're free trade oriented as I am. But I mean, I do think that Trump and Vance have a point here with respect to the deception engaged in by Carney and his relationship with the Chinese communists.
I think that's right. And look, Canada's economy, as you just pointed out, is much weaker than the United States is. And Canada, look, I'm not in favor of these new rounds of tariffs that Trump wants to put on Canada. I think it's not a good time when people are already concerned about affordability to raise prices again on imports. But that being said, Canada has been cheating. They impose very high tariffs.
Steve? Hello, Steve?
Oh,
did his satellite phone go out?
Wait,
you cut out when you were saying they impose very high tariffs on us.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So it's not a great time to do these tariffs with Canada. But look, the fact that what was that number you just cited, that of the 20 major countries, Canada has the lowest increase
in GDP growth. Oh, of the 38 OECD countries, they're 38th.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Big mistake. They can't win a tit-for-tat trade war with the United States because their economy is totally dependent on exporting to the United States. If they can, now look, we both benefit from trading with each other, and I've always been in favor of the whole idea of Canada, Mexico, and the United States being one big free trade zone. That was Ronald Reagan's vision back in the early 80s. But, for their response to say, well, if you're going to put these high tariffs on us, we're going to put high tariffs on you, that's just not a game they can win. So, and Carney's kind of a communist.
Yeah.
He hates the United States. He's a terrible spokesman for the Canadians, and it's a frustrating thing. But I'm more frustrated, frankly, with what's going on here in the U.S. And I love Donald Trump, but I just think this White House is off message right now in terms of explaining to people what the number one concern is, which is affordability. And I just don't think that they're addressing it. And if they don't address it, and these bad numbers on consumer confidence and Trump's bad numbers can persist until November, it could be a wipeout for Republicans.
You did see the missive earlier this week that they're greenlighting the importation of more beef to try to lower the cost of beef for the American family. So
right. And that's a good, that's a good thing. And, there are a lot of things. Well, how about indexing capital gains tax for inflation? The Republicans need a message right now. Remember Bill Clinton's line, "I feel your pain."
Yeah.
I think, I think we need a little bit of that from, the stop talking about your ballroom and talk about, how you're going to get prices down. Now, look, everyone knows the reason we have higher prices today is because of the oil price, which is still hovering around $80 a barrel. And it's the quagmire of Iran that has caused these prices to go up. And hopefully that will get resolved at some point soon. And by the way, it is true, as Larry Kudlow would say, as soon as that oil price starts to come down, the price of everything else will come down as well. But Lord knows when that's going to happen.
So, I mean, if you were in the inner sanctum there with President Trump and his team, you would be saying we need to offer a forward-looking vision of what we're going to do to build on the BBB with respect to tax relief. And would you also say we need to have a message of what we are looking to do going forward about addressing $40 trillion in debt?
Well, nobody wants to talk about that, Dan.
Yes.
The Democrats don't want to talk about it. The Republicans don't want to. The only thing the Republicans have going for themselves right now, the only thing they have going for themselves?
The DSA, yeah.
Right. So you've got two parties that are completely off message right now. And, they've got by the way, did you see in California that they've now passed the Shut Up Nick Shirley Act?
Yes.
So it's like, for people who aren't following this story, the one guy who's exposing all the fraud in these government programs, like the daycare center programs and the Medicaid fraud and all this, is this 23-year-old kid with a camera who's going in and exposing all the fraud. And so California, instead of going after the fraud, they're going after Nick Shirley and saying, you can't do that. You can't put a camera in front of people's face and ask them what they did with the
Well, nobody likes a tattletale, Steve. Right?
Exactly. It would be, but Dad, it's almost like, if you're a bank robber and you come in with a mask on and you tell everybody, give me all your money, you take all their money, and then I'm the citizen, I tackle you and impede you, and then the police come in and arrest me for stopping the robbery. That's essentially what's happening with the Democrats today.
But elections are about the future, as the axiom goes, and you're right. There's a lot of sort of one-off. We're doing this, we're doing that, but there's no sort of forward-looking vision to say we've accomplished these things, and here's what's coming next if you leave us with the reins of power. And I don't think. It's productive, but I don't think the anti-fraud task force and some of these one-offs like the beef thing are going to be enough. And just to people's point, if you can't be blithe about this, because look, right now, both Ramaswamy and Husted are in trouble in Ohio, and Paxton is certainly in trouble in Texas.
Yeah, no, that's true. This could be a wave election like we had in 1994 when Republicans won every seat. I don't think it's going to be that bad because the Democrats really are struggling with their own message, and they keep nominating wackos for a lot of these jobs, but they could win. They could win because people it could just be a protest vote. And look, I think for Republicans, Trump has to do a better job of talking about, look, these are the things we've done. Let's not forget that illegal immigration has been caught at virtually zero. How about the fact that crime in major cities is down, 40, 50% since Trump came into office? How about the fact that we have more jobs than we have people to fill them right now? And there are 8 million jobs open in this country. How about the fact that we have the best stock market of any country in the world? How about the fact that we're dominating the technology age? All of these things are really good news. Look, I think objectively speaking, it's a pretty good economy. There's not a single country in the world that wouldn't trade with the United States right now. The Europeans are flat. Canada, as you said, is not just flat; they're declining. We're the one industrialized country that's continuing to grow. So we need some optimism here. And the most important thing we could do right now is cut some government spending, but they won't do it. The Republicans don't want to do it, Dan.
Yeah, the lingering problem. Well, we didn't get to $40 trillion in debt and then probably another 100 in unfunded liabilities by accident. It takes both parties working together.
Yeah. That's the one thing they cooperate on.
Yeah, correct. Steve Moore, economist, founder of Unleash Prosperity. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, Dan. Have a great day.
You too. And our conversation with Steve brought to you by Home State Bank. Consider Home State Bank as an impartial trustee to your estate and spare your family from conflict and disagreements. Again, talk to a Home State Bank trust officer today by calling 815-459-2000. That's 815-459-2000.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes, $1 million